Good afternoon for participant of east part of Asia, and good morning for participant of west part of Asia. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Dr. Surono. I am food scientist and also I'm education technologist. I'm glad to see you all, senior professional staff of National Productivity Organization or NPOs, certified management consultants, and certified professional auditors or assessor of personnel certification body. We can share experience each other to improve the development of assessment of green productivity specialists. This session we are going to identify GP qualification framework and levels of certification. You already discussed this morning introduction to the APO GPS 201 certificate scheme and competence standard for green productivity specialists, and then roles and responsibilities of assessors. This session will explain to assessor the competency standard for person to be certified under the APO GP Specialist Certification Scheme and how to GP qualification framework is used as an instrument for the development, classification, and recognitions of skill and knowledge. Well, the instructional goals of this session is the participant can identify the competency standard for persons to be certified under APO GP Specialist Certification Scheme. And then the participant can implement the GP qualification framework as an instrument for the development, classification, and recognition of skills and knowledge. So we have two steps or elements in identification of qualification framework and level of certification. First step is identify the competency standard for person to be certified under the APO GP Specialist Certification Scheme. The first activity in this step is to identify the APO GP qualification framework for GP specialists. Second, identify the green productivity domain expertise or certificate scheme for 8 tiers, and then identify the units of competency standard for each tiers. And then the second step, we will going to implement the GP qualification framework as an instrument for the development, classification, and recognition of skill and knowledge. In this step, we have 3 activities. The first is identify competency standard structure, and then identify the implementation of competency standard in the workplace training and assessment activities, and then identify standard as assessment tools. Well, let's see step 1. Identify the competency standard for person to be certified under the APO GP Specialist Certificate Scheme. There are 4 performance indicator or work instruction to do so. The first is identify the APO GP qualification framework for GP specialists. The second, identify the green productivity domain expertise or certification scheme for its tiers, and then identify the unit of competency standard for each tiers. We will discuss each of these activities in detail. Well, let's identify the first one. Identify the APO GP qualification framework for GP specialists. Here we have table of APO GP qualification framework. The first column is certification qualification level. Most of country have 8 level. However, in this scheme, we only have 2 levels which are already developed. namely level 7 for GP specialist and 8 for master GP specialist. Second column is qualification description. Consists of two descriptions, which are knowledge and skill and application and responsibility. And the third column is job title at this level may include but are not restricted to. Let's see the first column, certification level. Here we have certified master GP specialist, and the knowledge and skill. This demonstration of knowledge and skill that are the most advanced specialist level at the GP frontier. Involve independent, original thinking and research, resulting in the creation of new GP knowledge and practice. And then for the application and responsibility, this context in which knowledge and skill are demonstrated, highly specialized and complex, involving the development and piloting of new innovation to resolve issues and seize opportunities through pollution prevention, eco-efficiency, cleaner production, and the circular economy, among others. This require authoritative expert judgment in managing research or organization and significant responsibility for extending professional knowledge and practices, including capacity building and policy advocacy. And then for the job title at this level may include but not restricted to. We can see here we have production manager, environment manager, environmental consultant, QA or QC manager, quality or productivity consultant. This is level 8. And then for GP specialist or level 7 of qualification framework, the knowledge and skills, demonstration of knowledge and skill that show detailed technical and theoretical knowledge of a general GP field. Involve critical independent thinking as the basis for research to extend or redefine GP knowledge or practices. And the application of and responsibility, context in which knowledge and skill are demonstrated. This is complex and unpredictable, involving the development and testing of innovative solutions to resolve issues and seize GP opportunities, and then applying GP tools and technique to ensure intended outcome. The job title, we have assistant manager, engineer, technical executive, quality control executive, productive executive. This is two level we already developed in GP specialist. For level 6 to level 1, it's already described, but it's not developed. The standard is not developed yet. Yes, this is the level 5, GP Junior Analyst Technician, Certificate 4, GP Production Level 4, Certificate 3, Certificate 2, Certificate 1. They are already described, but the standard and certificate scheme is not developed yet. Well, now we move to identify the green productive domain expertise or certificate scheme for each tiers. Here we have table 4, domain expertise or competencies of certified GP specialists or tier 1. For the first column, we have an area of GP domain expertise. It's Annex A. And then the second column, we have unit of competency. Here we have 13 unit of competency. In the group of, we have a core competency. In core competency, we have 3 unit of competency. Promote concept of GP. And then the second is implement GP methodology and its tools. And then implement technique for GP. So this is actually the core competency or core tasks or core job tasks. So GP specialists have to do this 3 core competency. And then we have a group of GP consultancy. There are 3 unit of competency or 3 tasks. Prepare a plan for GP implement project, facilitate GP project implementation, and the third, facilitate managing GP project implementation. And then GP training for the GP specialists who work in the GP training workplace. There are 4 have to do. Undertake organizational training need analysis, design and develop learning program, design and develop learning resources, and then plan, organize and deliver group-based learning in GP methodology and related technique. And then GP promotion, the group of GP promotion. There are 3 unit of competency. Develop GP implementation agenda for an organization, and then prepare comprehensive GP promotion plan, and prepare innovative dissemination materials based on GP themes. This is 13 unit of competency for GP specialists. Here we have code, and then the detail of this standard of competency we can see in the Annex A. Well, now we have Certified Master GP Specialist. The domain expertise or competencies of Certified Master GP Specialist Tier 2 include all listed in Table 4 in addition to those listed in Table 5. In the Table 5 here we have additional domain expertise competency of Certified Master GP Specialist or Tier 2. We have here the first column is area of GP domain expertise is in Annex A, and then we have a unit of competency GP applied research on materials, design and processes. In this group we have a unit of competency conduct applied research on GP development. This is the code of the standard. And then GP policy development, we have two units of competency. The first is develop GP policy for an organization, and then develop public policy on GP. This is the standard code. All of the unit of competency detail or document of the standard is attached in Annex B. Ladies and gentlemen, now we move to step 2. Implement the GP qualification framework as an instrument for the development, classification, and recognition of skill and knowledge. We have 3 criteria. Identify competence structure. We will identify implementation of competence standard in the workplace, training and assessment activity, and then identify the standard as assessment tools. We will discuss this specifically. Well, now let's identify structure of competence standard. Here in the middle we have the structure, and with the example. The structure is called RMCS model. This developed by the ILO, International Labour Organization. We have their unit title here. This unit as title express the main outcome that someone who is credited with the standard has demonstrated they know and or can do. And then we have unit code, and then description. The description describes the purpose of the standard. Often the description is collation of the competency standard elements. And then we have element here. The element tell the learner what they should be able to do. Elements are outcome statements that describe the more detailed outcomes that learners' knowledge and skill are assessed again. Together, the elements comprise the outcome expressed in the title. In order to be credited with the standard, a learner must achieve all the outcome described in the element statement. This element in industry they call sometimes they call the step of the procedure. And then we have performance criteria tell the learner how they can show that they are competent. The criteria specify the critical evidence required to meet the outcome, and then together the evidence requirement provide the standard against which the outcome are assessed. So here we have element and then performance criteria, and then here we have evidence guide. The evidence guide consists of guidance note for assessor to help them determine when competency has been achieved. The notes may contain information about the condition and context of assessment, suitable methods, and resource implication. And then we have here critical skill and also essential knowledge. Are here critical and essential knowledge assessment are brief. They outline what the person need to actually do to perform their work or critical skill. They must also include what the person needs to know to be able to perform in an informed and effective manner or essential knowledge. The last is the range statement. A range statement clarify the scope and range of performance. This ensures that the same factors are considered for assessment of each learner. Yes, we can see here one of our standard. This is the structure, unit title. For example, prepare a plan for a GP implementation project. This is the unit descriptor, and then we have elements, which is there are 4 elements, or there are 4 steps to prepare a plan for GP implementation project. And then each element have a performance criteria. And then we have evidence guide here, critical skill assessment knowledge, and range statement here. This is our standard, which is 13 unit of competency for GP specialists. Well, now let's identify how the implementation of competency standard in the workplace, training and assessment activity. Here we have model of interface between curriculum, competency standard, standard operational procedure, and assessment. Here we have 4 columns. We have industry or workplace SOP, competency standard, curriculum, assessment of competency. They have interface between them. Here we have competency standard. This have interface with SOP. The unit title actually traceable to title of procedure or task. Unit description traceable to the scope of applicability. Element we have traceable to procedure, main task, of tasks. And then performance criteria traceable to work instruction in industry. And then evidence guide is traceable to quality assurance and quality control. And then critical skill and sales have interface to the standard of process and product or services. And then range statement, this have interface with reference and context. So once we have a standard of competency, so in industry, we can, or in the workplace, we can develop SOP based on this standard. So we can have the unit, the title of the SOP come from unit title, unit description to scope of applicability, element become main step of task, and then perform criteria in the standard is the sentence is passive voice, and then become the work instruction, become the sentence is instruction. And then evidence guide become quality assurance here, and then critical skill and knowledge, we can have the standard of process, product and service. Range statement become reference and context in industry. And then again, with the standard of competency, we can develop curriculum or DACUM. The unit title become the general or the title of the module, and also the general objective or instructional goals. And then unit description become scope of curriculum, and then element become learning objectives or selection of learning experience or activities. And then perform criteria become criteria to perform, organization of learning experience. Then the evidence guide become evaluation and assessment of learning experience. And then critical skill and essential knowledge become the basic of competency, and then range statement become reference. So once we have curriculum traceable to the standard, so we can guarantee that the student can implement it, can implement the standard or the curriculum into industry SOP. And where they want to have certification or assessed by the certified body, so they should conform with the standard. This is the model of interface between curriculum, competence standard, standard operation module, and assessment. Well, now we can see here that how we develop SOP come from the standard. Here SOP, an example of SOP. This is standard. For example, the unit title of the standard is prepare a plan. This is our standard. Prepare a plan for GP implementation project. Then become SOP. Prepare a plan for a GP implement project. We can take this title of SOP come from the title of unit, and then the scope of the SOP come from the unit of description, and then the step of procedure come from the element, and then the work instruction come the performance criteria. Here passive voice sentence, then become work instruction, become instruction sentence here. So we can have directly from the standard become an SOP here. Again, from the standard and SOP we develop, and then we can develop form to be used for record or to record our activity of the SOP. For example, here prepare plan for a GP implement project, and then this is the step, activity, and then result. The result, some of them we can get the range of statement from the standard of competency. So we can develop this form to be used as quality evidence by the GP specialists. Well, after we identify the qualification framework of the GP specialist and the standard of competency, and also we identify how the how to implement the standard of competency in the workplace. We can develop an SOP, and then we can develop the evidence, quality evidence. Now, let's identify standard as assessment tools. To identify this standard, we have to identify the principle of assessment and evidence guide. Here, principle of assessment, we have valid, reliable, fair, and flexible. And then the evidence guide should be valid, authentic, current, and sufficient. You know, in assessment, we need assessment tools. Can be observation checklist of demonstration to get the direct evidence. This is identified from the elements and performance criteria of the standard. And also, we can develop observation checklists for portfolio project as indirect evidence from this standard. This identified from the element and performance criteria of the standard. So we can develop the instrument assessment of observation checklist for portfolio and project. And then we can develop instrument assessment of structure question, can be written or oral. This structure question identified from the element and performance criteria of the standard, identified from evidence guide of the standard, identified from critical skill and essential knowledge standard, and then identified from range statement of the standard. So we can develop this assessment tools, observation checklist of demonstration, portfolio checklist or project checklist, structure question. We can discuss this one by one to develop the assessment tools. Let's see again the standard of competency, which very useful to develop assessment tools from this standard competency. We can develop a question come from the element, the step of the element here, how many steps or how the step of the preparing a plan for GP project, for example. And then we can make a question from the performance criteria. We make a question from the evidence guide. We can make a question from critical skill and essential knowledge. We can make a question come from range statement in this standard. Well, before we develop assessment tools, we have to prepare assessment plan. The assessment plan is based on the GP scheme. So you can develop assessment plan for GPS and master GPS. Here an example of template developing assessment plan here. For example, this is standard certification scheme, APO, GPS 201 here. And then occupation, whether green productivity or master GPS. And then the assessment approach, we have to identify the candidate, purpose of assessment, context, relevant project, relevant people to be confirmed, and then benchmark for assessment. And then we can develop assessment plan. Here we have unit competency, evidence, type of evidence, and then method of assessment. We can choose here. So, for example, here promote the concept of GP. The evidence could be a record of the activity of promoting the concept of GP, and the type of evidence is indirect evidence because this is the project, and then we could have a record. It's the indirect evidence, it's not direct. And then we can choose the method. If it is direct, indirect evidence record, so we need checklist observation of the portfolio. So we can tick here, so we can have what kind of assessment tools to be developed. And then we have supplement here is a question, both structure question, both oral and written question. and so on. This is the second step. And then the third step is modification and contextualization, if any. So contextualization required based on information from candidate workplace, training package or relevant training, what kind of modification, and then opportunity for integrated assessment activities, and record of any changes required for assessment instrument here. And then the fourth step, then we develop the instrument assessment. What kind of instrument assessment? Based on this assessment plan. Well, this is an example how we develop observation checklist for demonstration. So we can have from the standard of competency, the unit of competency, so we can develop observation checklist based on this standard. We move here the element and performance criteria, and then the benchmark of as a workplace context, and then the status, competent or not yet competent, and then the note. So we can use this observation checklist for demonstration to assess the candidate when they demonstrate the competency preparing a plan for GPD implementation project, for example. And then how to develop the observation checklist for portfolio report. So based on this standard or certificate scheme of the GP specialist, we can develop portfolio checklist for GP specialist certificate scheme. For example, here the competence unit, there is 13 unit. So we can put here based on the candidate evidence, the portfolio, what kind of portfolio of the promote concept standard, what kind of the portfolio evidence for the implement GP methodology, what kind of portfolio evidence of the implementation of technique for GP. So after we have all of the portfolio evidence here, so we can check whether this evidence conform with evidence guide, whether valid, authentic, current, and sufficient. So if this is all confirm with this evidence guide, then we can say, okay, this is competent, this unit. This is competent or not yet competent. Okay, now we are developing the question or the assessment tools of question. So before we develop the question, we have to make a question plan. Here we have a template for developing of question. This is the unit competency. You can take one unit competency and then make a questioning. If you want to make a question about the process or procedure of performing this unit, so we can have the information from element and performance criteria, and then we can make a question, type of question, choices, essay or oral here. And then if you want to make question about the knowledge, skill, and attitude for performing competency, and then you can get the information from element, performance criteria, and range of variable. And then for employee skill, if you want to make a question about the employability skill, so you can get the information from performance criteria, critical skill, and essential knowledge. And then if you want to make question about the dimension of competency, like a task skill, task management skill, contingency management skill, job role environment skill, and transfer skill, so you can contextualize from the unit of competency. So we can make a type of question, whether choices, essay, or oral. This is the question. So we can, after this question plan, so we can develop the question of the instrument assessment. Well, now we come to conclusion. with the GP qualification framework and its standard of competency, we can accurately and efficiently to implement the GP standard, because we can develop an SOP based on the standard. We can develop record performing unit of competency as qualified evidence, and then we can develop assessment instrument or assessment tools. By developing checklist observation come from the standard, develop checklist come from the standard based on the principle and evidence guide, and then we can develop the structure question based on this standard efficiently or productively. Oh, thanks God. Alhamdulillah, we already finished to discuss and to learn how the standard of competency and the qualification framework, how to implement this standard, and then how to develop assessment tools based on this standard. And then please try. I give you already the template of the table, so we can practice how to implement the standard and how to develop assessment tools. Thank you very much. See you again.